from WCIA3 Plus with your hosts Rob Good, Kaity Biquette, and Deane Geiken. You're watching Geekspeak Central.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Geekspeak Central. As usual, I am your host Rob Good, and on a previous episode, we discussed what makes a game classic. Replayability, cultural impact, among other factors. Today, Deane and Kaity join me once again to discuss what makes for a good game. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap, but I do think there are some very distinct factors that make a game good, like make one that's well designed and things, and you enjoy it. There's also a lot of personal preference in that kind of discussion as well. So let's get into it. What do you think makes a good game?
Well, before we start, I want to say there is no such thing as it. Well, it's like a bottle of wine. If you like a wine, it's a good wine. If you like a game, it's a good game. Nobody can tell you it's a bad game.
As long as you're entertained, it's a good game.
Absolutely. So let's get that. I came up with a list of 10 different things that I think every good game should have. And let's start with the first one, which is going to be the obvious thing. The goal. What is the goal? You got to have clear objectives. You got to have motivation as to why you want and how you win the game, right?
You got to be able to have that accomplishment that finishes the game.
Absolutely. It's going to direct your player decisions, all that kind of stuff. And the rules need to be in such a way, or I'm not sure the rules, the goal needs to be understandable so that you can kind of onboard people very quickly and they understand exactly what they need to do to win the game.
Can I talk a little bit about what makes a game understandable as far as its goal?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I like it when a game has what we call like ludonarrative resonance. That's when like the theme of the game, like the subject matter, the narrative, the story that it's about, and also the mechanics that kind of the rules that propel players through a game, they make sense. And so it's really effective when a goal is like, you need number go up, if that makes sense.
And there are games that don't really have a clear goal. Like they don't, like you're like, what am I doing? What am I trying to accomplish? When I've tried to learn games with friends, that's always the first thing that we're like, what's the end?
Yeah.
How do you win? Condition.
Yeah,
How do you win? That's got to be the first thing.
Yeah, the best board game rules have the here's the objective of the game, and then if a game has really strong visual communication, I find that can really be obvious.
And we've talked about, we all agree that we tend to like cooperative games.
That's true.
And there's a difference between you defeat your opponent, that's the goal, versus you as a group cooperatively defeat the game. Right?
Yeah.
And so kind of going along with what Kaity said, the second one has to be the rules. You got to have, the players have to have an idea of what they can and cannot do.
Yep.
And those rules have to be understood across the board by all the players. But those rules also have to be consistent, maybe somewhat intuitive, and easy to understand. I don't know how many times I've had to go back and read complicated rule sets that are like, what exactly are they trying to say here?
Yeah, and it also makes me think so far these two categories have been makes me think of board games and card games. But then you think of role playing games, and it's what is the goal of a role? How do you win Pathfinder?
That's a good point.
But the goal there is a very different thing because it's telling a good story.
I mean, but in the sense, in a role playing game, the DM, GM. Has kind of given you an idea of what the goal is.
The story has a completion of defeat the bad guy. But it also makes me think when you're talking about how many role-playing games have so many rules.
Yeah.
And they're trying to mimic these adventures, and it's sometimes those rules are that makes no logical sense for those rules to be how I do X.
The truth resists simplicity. It's really hard to put rules around something like that. But I'd say that as far as goals and rules go, those things have to kind of come together, be agreed upon in your session 0 for a role-playing game.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
I was going mostly on board games for things that I was thinking about. Yeah.
So the third one, this one's you got to have good interaction either with the board game itself, because sometimes you play a game that you're playing against the game itself in a cooperative game setting.
Yeah.
Or you're playing against the other people. But again, the board has to have good interaction between the players and the game itself.
I think that speaks to like both how the game is designed, like visually, like you mentioned that a moment ago.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's fun to look at as much as anything.
And is it cueing people accurately for
Yeah.
things they need to do?
Yeah.
Have you ever had one of those games where somebody invites you to a game? And Katie, maybe you've done this because I know you and I play more board games and role-playing games. The board is complete, or not the board, but the table is completely filled with all kinds of parts and pieces.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I mean, I have played those
Have you?
games.
It is overwhelming
Yeah.
sometimes. And you're like, oh my Lord, how many
I
sessions are we going to have to
Yeah.
play this one particular board game?
Yeah.
there is something about like sometimes I think that those things is what draws people where they're like, oh, these are visually cool. They got cool minis. They got, and there's like, I'm doing this. There's lots of things to fiddle with, but then there's other people like when it comes to the players who are like, this is overwhelming.
Yes.
Like there's the two types, the ones that want to have all that stuff and the ones that don't.
Yeah.
And I actually think that there are role-playing games that are like that as well.
Oh, yes. Too many expansions can be a bad thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I actually, I recently got a copy of the Daggerheart game, role-playing game, that the Critical Role one. And it's an interesting role-playing game and it has lots of things in there, but I did find it interesting that it's like, for that game, you don't just have your character sheet, you have tokens that track things and cards that are all your character's powers. And I'm like, oh, this is different from most role-playing games where you have a character sheet and your dice and a mini.
I see them.
And the GM brings maps and stuff, but they would still have to do that for this game.
go ahead.
Oh, I see them as trying to maybe like find a few more things that are like easier to understand for people and maybe that are marketable that
Oh,
they
yeah.
can sell it.
Yeah,
And
that was the first thought
yeah.
that my friend and I was telling him
just
about
for the
it,
folks
was
listening
like,
at home. So like Daggerheart is a new role-playing game that's been developed by the folks who work at Critical Role, which run their own, which they play Dungeons and Dragons live streamed on the internet, and they've developed Daggerheart, which lets you play a bunch of cool
yeah,
races.
they played 5th edition for a long time.
Yeah.
They had played Pathfinder before they started their actual YouTube
Right.
show. And you can tell because they
Yes.
stole things like
Classes,
the gunslinger.
yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. The and then they switched over to this one that's their own.
Yeah.
And I picked it up because I had a gift card and I was like,
Sure.
and it's one that I was interested in seeing what they did.
Yep.
And it's got some very interesting aspects to it, but that was very different than what I usually have seen in other role-playing games.
And on interaction, I wanted to say that's very interesting because there's different methods of board game interaction. Euro games are mostly about building up your own engine, your own like world, and there's not a lot of player interaction. And then in American games, we have a lot of what's called take that. A lot of blocking opportunities from our fellow players, but that interaction, that player agency, very important.
There was a game I played just called Escape, and it's an interesting thing where you're just rolling dice, and however many players, you're all rolling dice all at the same time because you're passing dice and back and forth to each other because you're trying to help your neighbors so that you can all get out of this like temple that's collapsing.
I love that game. It's
And
terrifying.
it is.
Real time.
It is so stressful.
You roll dice, put down tiles.
It sounds like
It is so stressful,
Get out,
but
yeah.
it was so much fun. We played it like 3 times in a row, and my friends and I were like,
I've played some games like that, yeah. So our fourth one that I had here is a catch-up feature, which I think is really important because I have been in a lot of games where somebody just runs away with the score, okay? They know exactly what they need to do, and they run away with it. There's got to be some type of catch-up feature so that, when the players, they feel like they always have a chance to win, all right? And that kind of comes back to a little bit on a sub-topic, balance and fairness. The player should feel that skill matters more than luck, right?
Yeah.
So, a well-balanced game ensures that no particular strategy is always going to win.
yeah. And it's always a lot of fun when things are like, you might think that you're like, oh man, I'm doing so poorly, and then all of a sudden things just change.
Yes.
And
There's a game,
that makes the game exciting.
There's a game that I recently discovered about a year and a half ago. It's called Foundations of Rome, and it has one of these mechanics in it that if you happen to be the player in last place, you get a few extra benefits that is not going to necessarily make you take over the lead, but it's going to give you a little bit of an advantage in a very realistic way. So it's kind of a cool mechanic in that sense. It's called Foundations of Rome.
Yeah, I have something to share. Within, you actually mentioned one of the like terms that we use within like in the biz, in board game creation. Yeah, balancing mechanics are important, and catch-up mechanics are kind of under that because you have issues of like what King of the Hill games or runaway leader games where someone like gets the advantage and then just like keeps on winning. But balancing also goes to scoring, making it so the scores like aren't also like torn apart from each other. So one person doesn't have all these points and one person's below.
Yeah.
Really good games do have like that balance to make it so it feels fair and even and gives everybody an opportunity to play.
Right. Yep. So do we have time to go on to the next one, or should we?
Let's go ahead and take a break now, and we'll come back with number 6.
Number 5.
Number 5.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll come back with number 5 in just a moment.
Sweet.
And we're back. I'm talking with Deane and Kaity about what we feel makes a good game. And we have our list of 10. We've gone through 1 through 4, so we can go on to number 5.
Right. Number 5 is I listed as inertia, which inertia means the game naturally pushes forward, and the turn flows very smoothly, and the players feel engaged. And I got to thinking about this, that in role-playing games, I think that's where combat fails. Because
I would agree with
will
that.
slow your game down almost to a grinding halt.
Yeah, and sometimes it's because of the rules. Sometimes it's just the way that the system has to work.
I've had plenty of players who, as soon as combat starts, I swing my sword, whatever. Now, granted, that's maybe a failing of mine and maybe a failing of theirs, but the rules for combat in RPGs could be streamlined, I think.
I would definitely say that in my experience from just talking to lots and lots of people about role-playing games, that is the biggest thing that every time they come out with a new game or new system of mechanics, it's like, how do we make combat flow quickly but in an exciting way, and it's never quite gotten there, because you always get to that point where you're like, okay, roll initiative, and then
really
everybody, and then you have to like organize. And I remember, back in the day when it's like you started to have to do things like, oh, I have to switch maps now, and that just like everybody's like, okay, looking at their watch, and it is unfortunate. And I think there are a few games out there that have streamlined that. Blades in the Dark comes to mind as one that, like, when combat comes, it's just like it just kind of flows into it, and you make a couple of rolls because it's more about the story.
Yeah.
And then that makes me think that the other thing about some of the actual play podcasts that I've listened to, I don't listen to Critical Role that much, but I listen to the Glass Cannon podcast. And one thing that I love about them, that particular podcast, is the way they make it, they give that inertia to their combats because they really describe what they're doing. They don't just say, I'm going to attack with a sword. They like stay in character, and they do things that like, they describe how they're casting spells and how they're attacking things.
But that's not likely to happen in your regular homegrown group.
Because they're, a particular type of person.
Until people figure out how it's fun. And I think it really speaks to part of inertia is that player agency. Like the ability to make different decisions, have them make a difference, and then be able to like drive the story forward.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's really true.
Yeah. All right, so number 6, and this one kind of goes towards replayability, but surprise.
Yeah.
There needs to be some element of unpredictability in the games. Okay. Through randomization, hidden information, things like that. I think that's what really allows people to kind of want to play the game again. If you are playing a game and it turned out to have some really cool twists and turns and some surprises, it's going to bring you right back to that game again. You're going to see a lot more tabletop time.
Yeah, I think that the first thought that pops into my head about that in response is how often I've played Magic the Gathering with people, and it's like, well, I know I'm not going to win because they spent a bunch of money on their deck and it's way better than mine, which is kind of similar to the balancing of a game. But yeah, it is kind of that thought of why play if you're not going to have a good time.
What's interesting is that I know a lot of people who hate randomness. And so when I saw surprise on here, I was like, okay, let's see what he has to say. But then you're kind of right. Because I always like a different challenge, even if there's not dice rolling. When I've tried to pitch games, people are like, oh, I hate rolling dice because it's random what resources you get. And I'm just like, no, it's working around it. That's fun. And even in games where you don't have dice rolling and randomness, the game as it plays out is still something that you kind of have to like strategically figure out, and that can be the inherent surprise of it.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds to me like whether people who would, if you're going to say I don't like the randomness, maybe we're just not. You're not thinking of it in the same way. Because when you say that, like, you don't like the randomness, like, how could you not? Like, but then, like,
life is random. Come on.
Yeah, and it is. There is a certain amount of like, oh, we're not really understanding each other in what it is that we're liking and disliking necessarily.
Well,
and that sometimes it's hard to communicate those ideas.
With some of those heavy Euro games, people just want to build an engine and make it go, and they want to know exactly what the options are and exactly what the challenges will be. So yeah, it's interesting.
So the next one can kind of be a deeper topic, or maybe not so deep, but strategy. Every game has got a level of strategy. Some are really deep for kind of a long game play, and some is just the strategy for short-term acquisition of points, okay? But that also kind of talks back to the game mechanics and replayability. If you can change your strategy each time you play the game and still maybe not necessarily come out ahead, but give your opponents a good run for their money, then maybe it's a strategy you might want to try to hone in on a little bit on the next time.
Well, and that's why people love games like chess, but more modern versions of games like Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder have the combat does have a certain. There's people that all they want to do is combat because all they're seeing is a minis game. Yeah. And then that brings up, we don't mention minis games a lot in our episodes, but I love playing Warhammer 40K and stuff like that. And it's a very, very complicated, strategy, move your troops around kind of thing. And a lot of people, that you can really get into that.
Right. I haven't really thought too much about this, but it just kind of came to my head. But I think that strategy is where rules lawyers come from because they're trying to get the most out of the rules as possible without breaking the rules. But then again, you always get the players who are like, I want to do this. Why can't I do this in this game? When it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, it goes beyond and it could break the game.
I don't think I've ever known more rules lawyery type of people than the people who play like Warhammer 40K.
Right.
Yeah.
Like those big board
years
game,
ago,
miniature games. Yeah.
Years ago, I knew a guy who we were playing like at a game store like on a weekly basis, and he would be like, one week he would argue endlessly about a rule that was like benefiting him, and then the next week the very same situation would happen, but now it's against him. So he would argue for hours and be absolutely stubborn that it was and you're arguing the exact opposite of what you did last week
because it does not benefit that particular
exactly. And that takes the rules lawyering thing. Yeah. We could probably do a whole episode on rules lawyers.
That sounds like just how that person likes to play the game.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. So probably the one that should maybe be the number one thing, but it's got to be fun, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of goes back to what I said. If you like the game, it's a good game. If you don't like the game, then you're not going to have fun. But at its core, you should be trying to play a game that is going to be fun for both you and everybody else at the table, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a social aspect to every board game that we play. Absolutely. And if you're not having fun with the people that you're playing there, maybe it's the players, maybe it's the game.
And there's different reasons that make it fun and not fun for different people, and because it's like. We seem to have a lot of bad things to say about Magic the Gathering, but it actually is a fun game unless you get with that person that makes it not fun. Yeah. Right. And like you said, it's a social thing. And the same thing happens in role-playing games or any board game when you get that person who just doesn't mesh with you. So you got to kind of sometimes suck it up if that's the situation, or you have to be like, that's a person I don't want to play games with anymore.
Within designing games, we also try to advise people follow the fun. And so try to make it so you identify what exactly is fun about the game. Is it the surprise? Is it the meta play, which is kind of what you do as you're playing the game, as you're kind of like role playing the people in the game? And so I tell my students, and then within Kudo Plays, be like, yeah, find what is fun, follow that, and try to like articulate what that is.
Well, I've got two more, but I think I really want to kind of lean into Kaity on this next one. So
Sure.
let's take a break.
All right, yeah, let's go ahead and take a break right now, and we'll be back, and we'll finish up those last two, and be back in just a moment. And welcome back. I'm with Kaity and Deane, and we're talking about what makes good games. You have a couple more on your list of 10. If we want to quickly go through those, and you said you want to lean on Kaity for this next one.
Well, okay, because she mentioned it earlier on.
Sure.
But the last two kind of go together. Kind of the flavor of the game and a hook, that flavor, the theme or the settings and stuff like that. But that also incorporates the components and everything. So, I'm going to toss it to you because that's more your...
Sure. I love a very themey game, one that has a really, really strong narrative and maybe all of the components, the visual communications like the icons, either like on the board or in the book that you're referring to. They all kind of like go in with that theme. And what I love about like a game that has a strong narrative, a strong like visual identity, whether it's from a different like setting or a time period or just like a process. Sometimes a strong theme in visual communications can actually help people understand the mechanics of the game and what to do.
Yeah.
And vice versa. The mechanics like help people understand more about like a part of the world they didn't know about.
I feel like that might be a reason why I personally really like games based on IPs.
Yeah.
Like Battlestar Galactica board game is a great game.
Fantastic.
You have some existing
some
knowledge
Star
that can help
Wars,
you kind of understand what to do.
The Star Wars Outer Rim board game is really great. Games like that where you understand kind of the world and story that they're telling.
And Kaity, you said something, that's something that appeals to you, a game that appeals to you because of the theme.
Yeah.
Don't discount ones that don't appeal to you because some of the best games I've ever played are ones that are like so far out of my realms of interest that I'm like, wow, okay, that was better than I thought it was going to be.
That's fair.
Let's get to your last one.
It's kind of the same. I was incorporated in a hook. You gotta have a hook,
Something that pulls you in.
right? And again, I want
And the theme
kinda,
really kind of covers that.
For a lot of people, like the IP thing that you're mentioning, Rob does
Yeah.
pull them in. They're like, okay,
Absolutely.
that's
Like,
my hook. Here we
There's
go.
a reason why I have the G.I.
Yeah.
Joe deck building game.
Exactly.
Because it's G.I. Joe, and that's what
Right.
I grew up with.
Yeah.
We do have a few minutes before we need to wrap up. And normally we end with a what are we into nerdy thing. But I have a special thing that I wanted to bring up. We've been doing a few of these episodes now, and I've gotten friends and family to watch them. And my sister, who is not a gaming person whatsoever, is like she watched the first episode, and I thought she had a very interesting comment.
Oh.
Her comment was, "That one host guy of yours looks like somebody familiar." And it is Gilderoy Lockhart from the Harry Potter series.
It's not the first time I have been told that. Ken Branagh is one of my favorite actor-directors, and his Henry V impersonation is me in my reenacting pose.
There's not many actors out there that you could say is like a better person to be compared to. But
hilarious.
My sister told me that. It was the first thing she said when she watched the first episode, and I just thought it was hilarious. So I had to bring it up, and we had the side-by-side image there. So it was
Awesome,
just
Rob's sister.
Yeah, we'll see if she actually watches this episode as well. But I'll make sure we brought it up to tell her that we brought it up. So again, thank you everyone for watching the show. Thank you, Kaity. Thank you, Deane. Is there any last things anybody wants to say? We got maybe a minute or so.
You know, if anybody's got any suggestions or topics that they'd like us to maybe cover, I don't know if there's a way to contact us, but
I will say that I am working on that.
Okay. Cool.
That is something I'm working on.
Stay tuned.
That we can get emails and whatnot. So hopefully that'll be something that will come up. You know, and I agree. I would totally love to have, you know, viewer input on like cover this topic, talk about this nerd thing, and not just gaming. We do talk a lot about gaming. That's sort of our flavor of nerd, of being nerds, is we like gaming a lot. But you know, we all love Star Trek. We love Star Wars. I mean, those are things that we have thought of that we should be covering on some episode or what in the future. So
definitely, I want to talk about what live plays we do watch or listen to. I want to hear more about Glass Cannon. That sounds cool.
They do a lot of really great things. Live plays are great. We're going to do stuff about escape rooms here, hopefully coming up.
Yes.
And any other topics. So hopefully we can, you know, like Deane said, any suggestions would be great.
Right.
All right. Well, until next time, this has been Geekspeak Central.